Please be seated. And so it begins. What is, in essence, a single observance of holy mysteries spread over 3 days. This is, of course, a time to contemplate the suffering and death by which we have been given a pledge of eternal life. It begins as night has begun to fall, and will culminate in the dawn of Easter morning. We name this beginning Maundy Thursday, the word Maundy deriving from the Latin for commandment. This day is named after Jesus' commandment to his disciples to love one another. But the name is doubly appropriate, for there is that other commandment, the one our patron saint Paul writes of to the church at Corinth. On the night when he was betrayed, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And so, we here mark the night where Jesus turned a meal with his disciples into the means by which we might remember him. In every celebration of the Holy Eucharist, we remember his total self-offering. And I can't help but think that it might have been otherwise. Jesus might have walked away from what was to come. He might have evaded, at least for a while, the betrayal, evaded the confrontation with the destructive powers of empire and establishment, evaded the bloodlust of the crowd. I dare say we would not be here tonight if he had just quietly slipped out of Jerusalem to disappear into some obscure place, avoiding any word or action that would call attention to himself. Conversely, he might have taken advantage of the sentiment of the crowd that greeted him upon his entrance into the city just days before. The conditions were perfect for setting off a violent, destructive rebellion against the Roman occupation. He might have given in to the expectations of a crowd ready for him to take up the mantle of a conqueror. Jesus chose a different way, the way of obedience to what he understood to be divine purpose. He chose what he understood to be his Father's will. And so, knowing what was about to unfold, he left us a way to recall time and time again him, to recall his teaching, his example, his sacrifice. He took bread and wine and transformed our vision of these things of earth so that we might see them as equally things of heaven, celebrated week in and week out, even daily in some contexts, on ordinary days and special ones, in times of rejoicing and times of peril, this thing that we have been instructed to do in memory of him, it has the power to shape us, to transform our way of seeing our own stories as part of the story. It has power to bring meaning to even our most painful experiences of weakness, failure, or loss. It has power to nourish and strengthen us, to grow into who God created us to be. That was his commandment. And then there is that other commandment, the one this night is named for. In tonight's gospel, we are called to consider the purpose of the divine word entering into human flesh. That purpose is love, the kind of love that makes itself known in humble service. The gospel narrator would have us remember Jesus' example. The revered teacher, the one they called Lord, took on the role of a servant, washing the feet of those gathered at the table. Whether the washing of feet is ritually reenacted or not on a night like this, the commandment remains: love one another. And to be frank, I think we do not need the physical act of foot washing to imagine ourselves in that scene, to feel the cleansing water, to feel Jesus' gentle touch. It is fitting that we begin this sequence of sacred days as night falls. In John's Gospel, night stands for the world as a place where difficult and even bad things happen. We are remembering a night of betrayal, a fearful night, a time of profound disappointment and loss. That night, the disciples would find themselves standing on the brink of the unknown, which carries with it its own kind of darkness. A darkness pregnant with possibility, but often frightening nonetheless. We here have come in out of the dark, and though our life's journey will take us back out there, now we need not go without hope. Now we can go even into the darkness of suffering and death, fortified with the assurance that nothing need separate us from God's love, not even our own inner darkness. And so let us tonight renew our resolution to obey the commandments he gave, empowered to do so by the love from which they come. Because in the words of our friend, poet Malcolm Guite, here, in this night, he shows the full extent of love to us whose love is always incomplete. In vain we search the heavens high above. The God of love is kneeling at our feet. Though we betray him, though it is the night, he meets us here and loves us into light.